In my 21 years as a priest, in what is now that I've arrived here in Epping Carlingford, 8 parishes, I've met so many wonderful, devoted, faithful Catholics, people of such integrity and virtue and goodwill, all of whom would wholeheartedly agree with the statement, God loves everyone. But some of whom I've discovered, if I ask a follow-up question, does God love you? They balk, and they can't answer it, because they don't truly believe and experience that God loves them personally. For those people, the words we hear in the Gospel tonight of Jesus hearing from his Father, "You are my Son, the beloved, my favour rests on you," this is history, but not a living invitation that touches their life in any way now. This weekend, we celebrate the feast of the baptism of the Lord. It is the culmination of the Christmas season. We celebrate here 3 weeks after Christmas. And it is for us an experience which is so important that all 3 synoptic Gospels report it, and it's alluded to in the 4th Gospel as well. And there's so much we could discuss about the baptism of the Lord. This weekend, I don't want to talk about what Jesus did or what John the Baptist did, but rather what God did to Jesus. And we hear that what happened to Jesus was that after he went forward and was immersed in baptism, that God spoke to him and affirmed him, saying, "You are my Son, the beloved, my favour rests on you." And we hear that same affirmation again later in the Gospel on the Mount of Transfiguration, where again the voice of the Father is heard from the clouds, affirming Jesus once again in the same words. And so this is clearly important, and I believe it's something that Jesus probably needed. He needed to hear this from his Father. Jesus was divine. He was completely divine, but he was also fully human. And so he needed to have some affirmation at those two key moments of his life. One, at his baptism, before he began his ministry in Galilee, and the second, on the Transfiguration, before he then began the journey to Jerusalem and to the cross. And if Jesus needed that affirmation, so do we. We also need to be told and assured that we are indeed loved. And for some people who don't feel that or believe that to be so, especially from God, for some people that stems back to issues in their childhood around how love was expressed or not expressed in their family. For others, it's a hurt of such betrayal that's cut them off from believing anyone could love them. For other people, it may be an experience of guilt or shame that's happened over the years that cuts them off. And for all these things, we need to work through and really try to reorient ourselves to Jesus. Because the good news is that Jesus doesn't hoard his belovedness of the Father. In immature relationships, we might see it in teenagers where people want to be someone's best friend and not have anybody else in the circle. Or even in families, children vie to be mum or dad's favourite. But that's immature relationships that are exclusive. But Jesus, because of the fullness of love he experiences in the Trinity and from his Father, doesn't need to hoard that love. He wants to share it. We hear St. Paul say in Philippians that Jesus did not cling to his equality with God, but emptied himself. And we hear in the Gospels Jesus wanting to share his relationship with his Father with us. We hear this most clearly when Jesus invites his followers to call the God whom he has discovered and called Father. He says that we can call that God our Father. At the Last Supper, Jesus prays that we too would experience the same unity which he has with the Father, and many other times besides. We hear Jesus actively inviting us to share in his love with the Father and within the Trinity. And that's the good news. That's the good news of the Incarnation. Again, the good news of Christmas. Because Jesus didn't come to earth for a day trip or even a fact-finding mission. Jesus came to share in our humanity fully so that we could share in his divinity. That's the words of one of the ancient church fathers, that Christ came to share in our humanity so that we could share in his divinity. Even before we get to the mysteries of redemption at Easter, we are transformed, humanity is transformed by Jesus participating in it. When someone stronger comes in, Jesus doesn't get dragged down to our level, we get brought up to his level. We get transformed so that we too can share in his belovedness with the Father. And so that's something I hope that we will do together this year. In fact, thinking about this homily this week has made me think about what I hope might happen in my, 6 years here in Epping Carlingford Parish. And yes, there will be some very obvious things, some new buildings at Epping will happen, but that's not really important. What is truly important, I think, is that every one of us know and understand and believe ourselves to be loved by God, so we can hear those words that God spoke to Jesus spoken to us. You are my beloved son. You are my beloved daughter. My favor rests on you. Because when we truly believe we are loved, and for me that's a big part of my conversion story, which I'll share with you in the coming years, I think when we truly believe we are loved by God, then our prayer and our devotion flow so much more freely. Our acts of good work and virtue also flow more freely, because we're not trying to impress God, not trying to get to be loved by God. Rather, it's a return for the love that we already know that we experience and have. So that is my hope for us this year and in the years ahead, that we together would grow ever more in love with our God through Jesus, and we experience that we are indeed loved by him.